All right, Faisal, let's start.
We'll start with the next week's poster like last week, or?
Are you going to leave?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Then later on.
So I exit.
Well, let's start this session. Hello, everyone. Salam, namaste, adab. In today's session, the state of constitutional democracy in today's India is by Dushwan Dabe Sahab, who is a senior advocate of Supreme Court of India. And he is going to be supported by opening remarks from Professor Muhammad Tariq Saab, Professor of Law from Aligarh Muslim University. And concluding remarks will be given by Kavita Srivastava, who is a well-known National Secretary of People's Union of Civil Liberties, a human rights and activist, a feminist, and founder of many other NGOs. So welcome you all, and I invite now Professor Muhammad Tariq Saab to give the opening remarks. Yes, Tariq Saab, please.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. Mr. Dushwan Dabe, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India. Respected Dr. Razi Raziuddin Sahab, Moderator, Indian Diaspora, Washington, D.C. Metro, and Senior Member, Tariq Alumni Institution, Washington, D.C. Ms. Kavita Srivastava, National Secretary, POCL Delhi, dear August viewers, very good evening in India, and very good morning to Americans and rest of the world. Have a great day to all. Really, I'm very grateful to Dr. Razi Raziuddin Sahab, who gave me an opportunity to share with you a very pertinent issue. And the organizing team deserves for the appreciation to select a burning issue of the time. That is the state of the constitutional democracy in today's India. You know, my dear viewers, India has more than 72 years history of democracy, tolerance, and rule of law. It has been successful in managing its multicultural diversity and enshrining secularism in its constitution. However, this state of affairs is currently challenged by a growing some so-called nationalist influence on society and politics. For some years, the endurance of constitutional democracy in India has been a puzzle for political scientists and public law scholars. The creation of self-government on Indian soil challenged Western political theory and history, and its survival in typical and unusual circumstances has mystified learners of comparative politics. India has, managed to hold election with remarkable regularity, and it boasts of a constitutional culture where conflict has, for the most part, been articulated through legal means. The troubling reality of contemporary Indian political life, where the principles of constitutional democracy appear to be under threat, does not take away from the achievement of modern India or from the puzzle that the nation's history invites. Regardless of whether India will remain a constitutional democracy, it is somewhat astonishing that it was ever one to begin with. Even though the perplexity of the Indian experience has been the subject of scholarly interest and popular fascination, the origins of this experience remain relatively understudied. House Freedom in the World 2020 report portrayed as a fact that India is the only free country in the region, but awarded it a lower score than the previous year. The year 2019 World Press Freedom Index has highlighted violence against journalists as one of the most striking characteristics of the current state of press freedom in the country. My dear viewer, that India is a world leader in internet shutdowns. It's not a good fact. It's not a good news that in the past 7 years, there have been more than 400 cases of internet shutdown. There are some of the instances of threat on the Indian democracy faced in recent times. However, the broad aspect on threat to any democracy would be like this one, that, for example, the illiteracy, it's a factor, it's a major challenge for India's democracy since the independence of the country. It has been that the illiteracy has been a challenge because both the education level of its people and the socio-economic development of a nation play a vital role in achieving success in a democratic nation. Another challenge is poverty. Poverty is regarded as one of the biggest challenges in the way of the successful functioning of democracy. A hungry person least cares about his right to vote, and all he wants is food to fill his stomach. Till date, some people belong below the poverty line in our country. The process of economic development has not been able to ensure social justice and bridge the gap between rich and poor. It continues to remain a great challenge to Indian democracy. And another challenge to democracy in democracy, the gender discrimination. Although gender equality is a basic principle of democracy in India, our constitution guarantees equal treatment to all citizens, irrespective of their gender. Our fundamental rights, as well as the directive principle of state policy, makes this crystal clear. But the discrimination against females continues to be a fact of life. Certain examples include the abortion of a girl child, due to which female child ratio is decreasing day by day. Another challenge to the democracy, the Indian democracy, the casteism. Casteism is a differentiation made between individuals based on birth. This system further brought in practices like the untouchability, which continues despite being unconstitutional. It played a negative role in the development of democratic political development, as lower caste people are used as vote banks by the politicians. Another major challenge to the Indian democracy is the communism. Communism is a setback to the Indian democracy, as it acts as an offense to secularism. It creates a religious fundamentalism, which enforces communism in the exploitation of religion and politics. It is an ideology that helps in the growth of orthodox society and strict obedience. Submission to principles of religions. Religious fundamentalism opposes the progress of a nation and establishes control over various communities of the society. Another challenge to the Indian democracy, the regionalism. It is a true fact that the aim is to develop all regions, but imbalances remain. The problem related to regionalism begins when the different political parties use it for their political gains. Such a regional discrimination, deprivation, etc., attacks the democracy of a country. And next is the major challenge to the Indian democracy is the corruption. What's the state of the democracy in India now? The corruption is a major problem in India. It has its roots in every field, be it land, health, education, property, industry, transport, agriculture, armed forces, even spiritual pursuits, and even religious institutions. The corruption is being everywhere. It exists at all levels of politics, bureaucracy, government, and corporate. Another threat to the democracy is the criminalization of politics. The criminalization of politics is when the politicians undertake criminal actions to win elections. The criminalization of politics has become a very sensitive and debatable topic in recent years in India. Many politicians are dissatisfied with the principles of democracy and undertake undemocratic methods to win election. Such action are a major threat to the successful functioning of democracy. And next is the political violence. Violence is of the various forms, namely communal caste politics, criminal politics, political violence. Whenever a political party loses the election, its party members begin engaging themselves in violence. It is a threat to our democracy because it leads to aggressive competition for political power, and the victim is always the general public. My dear viewers, you know that these are all the challenges, and furthermore that you know that Mr. Dr. Rajiv has been only 5 minutes to just for the opening. And respected dignitaries, August viewers, we greatly expect that today's presenter, Mr. Dushyant Dave, senior lawyer, will discuss all these issues what we have discussed. We have just shared with you that the challenges we have shared with you. Mr. Dushyant Dave, you know that is a very senior advocate of the Supreme Court, has been practicing law for over 4 decades. He was a member of National Legal Services Authority during 2004 to 2008. He has served on board of leading International Arbitration Association and has been the president of Supreme Court Bar Association for 3 times. Dushyant Dave sir regularly defends public causes both inside and outside the courts and contributes regularly to op-eds in leading newspapers and magazines on national, legal, and constitutional issues. Sir, we would love to hear from you. Thank you. Thanks to all.
Ji Dushman ji.
Good evening, everybody. Namaskar, salam, everybody. Friends of the Indian Diaspora, Washington, D.C. Metro. Before I begin on the subject of today's discussion, the state of the constitutional democracy in India, I would like to say one thing to friends who are abroad, the Indians who are there and the Indian diaspora, that they have a great role to play in ensuring that the constitutional democracy in India not only survives, but thrives. And they can do so in many ways, including by creating public opinion, because public opinion created by them means a lot. They can also do a lot like the Chinese, non-resident Chinese did for China. They contributed immensely with funds and investments which led to tremendous development in China. So I think the Indian diaspora has a great role to play, and it is nice to see that the Indian diaspora is staying away thousands of miles from India, and for a number of years or decades, still in their heart has a great place for India. Their love for India continues, and that's something which is remarkable. The cultural values that they have inherited from their parents and grandparents, they still continue to, I think, follow them in even in the United States, and they are not so much influenced by the Western way of life, and they continue to have Eastern way of life, which is a remarkable achievement for all these people. And most of all, one must congratulate the Indian diaspora, because wherever they have gone, in whatever field they have worked or are working, they have excelled themselves, and they have brought India, great, I think, a feather in India's cap, that these, people, men and women who have been in United States right from the 60s, early 60s, engineers and doctors went, and thereafter in 80s and 90s, the technocrats, the techies came. All these people have done immensely well, and really, it's nice to see that Indian, ethnic Indians are perhaps the second most successful group in United States today, which speaks volumes of India and Indians. So please continue in your journey, and I wish you lots of good luck. And I do hope and pray and trust that you will continue to support us here in India. Having said that, let me now begin with the subject. The status of the constitutional democracy in India today. I think, let me go back to 25th of November, 1949, when Dr. Ambedkar was giving the last speech at the end of the debate on framing of the Constitution before the Constituent Assembly. As you all know, Dr. Ambedkar was not just the chairman of the drafting committee, which gave us this fantastic document, which I call India's Bible, India's Quran, India's Gita, and India's Guru Granth Sahib. But Dr. Ambedkar was truly a genius. And, it's really amazing as to what level of intellect the man must have possessed, and how prophetic his words were, which were spoken during the Constituent Assembly debates, is absolutely, unbelievable. It is a sad commentary that Dr. Ambedkar, who was a congressman all through freedom struggle, unfortunately fell out with Congress, and Congress had him defeated in the election in post 1950, and therefore his role in public life ended with that, which is, I think, which speaks very poorly on the nation and the Congress party, and perhaps somewhat on Jawaharlal Nehru, who did not perhaps agree with his views. And Ambedkar, of course, had a lot of reservation about Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi both, but that's a separate issue. How great and how prophetic he was. Please hear these words on 25th of November 1949. He was asked repeatedly during the Constituent Assembly debate, will India continue to have a democracy? His answer was, and I quote him, this democratic system India lost. Will she lose it second time? I do not know. But it is quite possible in a country like India, where democracy from its long disuse must be regarded as something quite new there is danger of democracy giving place to dictatorship. It is quite possible for this newborn democracy to retain its form. I repeat the words. It's quite possible for this newborn democracy to retain its form, but give place to dictatorship in fact. If there is a landslide, what he meant was election results. If there is a landslide, the danger of the second possibility of becoming actuality is much greater. Unquote. Now, these are his words on 25th of November, 1949. You can now, imagine how right he was, how prophetic he was. And it's amazing that, he could foresee what is going to happen in India in 1975 when Mrs. Gandhi declared emergency, and what is happening today post 2014 election, where although there is no emergency officially, but the status of democracy is definitely under serious strain, if I may say so. So Ambedkar said on that day something very interesting. He also said that, will history repeat itself? It is this thought which fills me with anxiety. This anxiety is deepened by the realization of the fact that in addition to our old enemies in the form of caste and creed, we are going to have many political parties with diverse and opposing political creeds. Will Indian place the country above their creed, or will they place creed above country? I do not know. But this much is certain, that if parties place creed above country, our independence will be put in jeopardy a second time and probably will be lost forever. This eventuality we must all resolutely guard against. We must be determined to defend our independence with the last drop of blood. Now, sadly, there is complete apathy, abject apathy in India, today's India, about defending the democracy. And this is something which is really an extraordinary development, which is, I think, going to cost this country very much in, in decades and centuries to come. We might, pride ourselves by saying that we are world's largest democracy, but you scratch the surface and you'll find that democracy is definitely vanishing faster and faster every day. And the responsibility is not just with the political class. The responsibility is much more with we, the citizens, because we are not willing to defend the democracy as we should, defend the Constitution as we should. As Albert Einstein had once said, that every man must defend Constitution to the last drop of his blood. Now there is no really, appreciation, much less reverence of the Constitution in country today. And Constitution has just become a document, another document, which is lying in some corner, for people. Nobody is really seriously interested in understanding Constitution. Nobody is seriously interested in, understanding what constitutional morality means, what constitutional ethos are, what is the constitutional way of life. Now, all these questions are singularly, absent from public debate. Today's debates in public life are concerned about completely, shallow issues, the irrelevant issues, and nobody really wants to discuss as to how to make this country stronger and stronger and stronger. So this is something which is very, sad. The preamble has three major goals. For example, as it was originally, Constitution was drafted originally, equality, liberty, and fraternity. Now, to my mind, each one of these goals are under serious challenge. Is there equality? It's really sad to see that there is no semblance of equality in this country. The gap between the rich and the poor is so much. The gap between the governed and the governors is so much. The gap between those who take law into their hands, the rich and the powerful, and those who are, ordinary subjects is so much. So, the socially, I mean, the caste system, which was, something which should never have really, been there after post 1947, has, is getting more and more rooted. And today's elections are only fought and won on caste equations. And if you have to give credit, to the Bharatiya Janata Party for, repeated successes, it is because their mathematics of caste is absolutely unbeatable. Sadly, the opposition parties, including the Congress, have completely forgotten how to counter this kind of a political blast. And as a result of that, the caste system is getting more and more perpetuated. There is more and more cries for reservations by every kind of a community and caste. And the governments are, bending backward to give that. Very recently, the Supreme Court of India, in fact, justified 50% reservation in super specialty positions in medicine for in-house doctors in Tamil Nadu, in state of Tamil Nadu. Now, I mean, all India, it's an all India test, NEET test, which is conducted after Supreme Court's own orders. And yet, people with outstanding marks will not be able to get those 50% seats in Tamil Nadu. It's a classic example of what's happening today. So equality and the liberty are seriously under challenge today. Liberty with which we are seeing today can be taken away on a drop of a hat. Even if you tweet something against the political leader, be it the chief minister or be it the prime minister, you can be picked up straight away by the police. And our judiciary will not grant a bail, which they are supposed to. So liberty is seriously under challenge today. Right to life, which is sacrosanct under our constitution, is singularly, is routinely being flouted by the executive of the day. And it's not just the political party in power today. It has been done. It's been done by the Congress party at some stage. So at every stage, it is happening that this kind of a, challenge to liberty has been taking place. I can share with you that in the 80s and early 90s, thousands of people belonging to minority community were arrested in Gujarat under extremely powerful laws, the anti-terrorist laws, when there was nothing against them. And I, as a young government lawyer, I was called upon to defend this many a times. And I had to stand up in the court and tell them that, no, this will not be, this is not permissible, and please release them. So it's not just a particular political party which is minded in this regard. I think every party that comes into power in India wants to perpetuate that power by suppressing the minorities. We are all seriously concerned and disturbed about the riots in Gujarat in 2002. But equally, the 1984 riots against the minority Sikh community were horrible. I mean, it's something which should never have happened in the history of this country. Now, why does this happen? Because the liberty of citizens in this country is today very easily bartered away. And citizens are not willing to stand up in guard against this kind of onslaught against, the liberty. So really the problem is not just the political parties. The real problem is the intellectuals of the country. Real problem is the civil society of the country. Real problem is the media of the country. So ordinary citizens are not willing to really assert themselves, in small groups or in large groups. They are not even willing to debate all these issues. So the liberty is under serious challenge. The last of the goals that Ambedkar wanted this country to strive for was fraternity. Where is fraternity today? There is no fraternity among citizens. The society is so deeply divided, not just between the majority and the minority communities, but also amongst the majority community in a very, very serious way. The untouchables or the Dalits do not form the mainstream of the society. Although, all kinds of proactive measures are being taken, but it is that fraternity which is singularly missing amongst people. And that is really a very, very serious cause for concern. Dr. Ambedkar called this, a trinity, the equality, liberty, and fraternity. And he said that each one is important. And only if the other, all three can work in unison, that the country can progress and prosper. If any one of the three is compromised, then country will not prosper. To my mind, all three are being compromised. All three are seriously being compromised. They are seriously under challenge. And this is something which we must realize as those of you who live there in the United States and still continue to love this country, for you to discuss this amongst yourselves, to ensure that this is debated, these messages are given not only to your friends and families in India, but also to those who are governing in United States, because political pressure from the government of United States can sometimes help situation. So this is something which is now this is not something which is I would say a phenomena of today. I will read out to you some of the debates of the Constituent Assembly when member after member had perhaps predicted or feared what is going to happen today. But before that, let me tell you what Bernard Shaw had said very beautifully in our experiment of democracy, the last refuge of chief misgovernment, as he says in Children of Light and Children of Darkness. He made a very beautiful statement. He says, men's capacity for justice makes democracy possible, but men's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary. Now, we have very, very serious problem of people's inclination towards injustices. The rich and the powerful constantly inflict injustices on the weaker people. So this is where there is a very, very serious issue. And the judiciary, I must say with great respect, which is supposed to be the organ to protect the citizens' rights, is singularly failing again and again and again. And mind you, it has some great judges, and even today, but these judges are unable to assert themselves as they should. To my mind, there should be zero tolerance as to the infraction of the constitutional rights of citizens, including fundamental rights. But that's not what is happening. That's not what is happening. And I mean, it's very difficult to see how judiciary can be, can be persuaded to take a zero tolerance toward these kind of infractions. I mean, some of us are constantly talking about it, writing about it. But I must say that, I mean, judiciary is only good in patches, not in consistency. Or if I may say so with respect to judiciary, of which I am a part, and I respect and love judiciary, that judiciary is consistently inconsistent about protecting fundamental rights of citizens. And that is something which is really troublesome. Now, during the Constituent Assembly, some of the members expressed these fears like this. K.T. Shah, one of the very powerful Gujarati member of the Assembly, said that subjecting this constitution to the laws thereunder or in accordance therewith at any time in force, the citizens will not be guaranteed any rights, because the constitution says that each of the fundamental rights is subject to certain exceptions. They felt that these exceptions will be used by the executive of the day to virtually make these fundamental rights redundant. He said, I suggest that it would not be enough to enumerate these freedom and say that citizens shall have them. I would like to add that words also, that by this constitution, these freedoms are guaranteed. Now, the words are added. It is guaranteed. But then the exceptions are carved out, and those exceptions take away those guarantees at, at drop of a hat, at the whim and caprice of the executive of the day. So the fundamental rights really are truly not fundamental any longer. That's something which is really troublesome. He said, and this is interesting, this is a very nice, I would say, analysis by him in 1948. The liberty of the person, ever since consciousness of civil liberties has come upon the people, has been the main battleground of the autocrats and those fighting against them. In no single instance other than this has the power of democracy wanted to assert itself against the just claims of the individuals to be respected in regard to his personal freedom. The autocrat, the despot, has always wished, whenever he was bankrupt of any other argument, the autocrat or the despot has always wished, whenever he was bankrupt of any other argument, just to shut up those who did not agree with him. It was therefore that at any slightest difference of opinion was expressed, slightest inconvenience or embarrassment was likely to be caused to an individual, the only course open to those who wanted to exercise autocratic powers was to imprison or arrest or detain such a person without charge or trial. Now, this was the fear that he expressed in 1948. Another member, Mehboob Ali Beg Sahib Bahadur, he said, fundamental rights are fundamental, permanent, sacred, and ought to be guaranteed against every power of a state, or by excluding the jurisdiction of the executive and the legislature. If the jurisdiction of the executive and the legislature is not excluded, the fundamental rights will be reduced to ordinary rights and cease to be fundamental. Now see the fears that they are expressing. And he said independence of judiciary of the state that has to judge whether a certain citizen has overstepped the limits so as to endanger the safety of the state is absolutely essential. Now, Dr. Deshmukh, another very powerful member, said, the present situation is certainly most obnoxious. He says in 1948, when there was a provisional government in India between 1947 to 1950, he says, present situation is certainly most obnoxious. We know of instances in every province where people's liberties are taken away. That, I think, is the height of disrespect for law. If that is the respect for law that we have, if that is the sort of administration that is going to be in our provinces, and we are not to look into the question of their propriety, I do not think that any provision in the fundamental rights would be of any use to us. So he says that this is what is happening today. Member after member expressed these fears during the Constituent Assembly debate. So we today are in an extremely precarious position in India, where expression of dissent and peaceful protests are being characterized as seditious when spoken by those opposing the government of the day. But those who indulge in worse crimes, like killing in the name of religion, killing for dietary habit, killing for falling in love, and openly inciting violence, resulting in death of innocent citizens, are simply allowed to walk away without punishment. Judiciary, besides the executive, to my mind, with great respect, is complicit in this. This serious contradiction in enforcement of rule of law is making complete mockery of the Constitution. I am reminded of very powerful words of Z.H. Lahari, who said on 20th May 1949 in the Constituent Assembly, everyone knows that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It is also truism to say that every party that comes into power tries to make its hold permanent. The only check on degeneration of party government into a despotism is the existence of another party which keeps a strict eye on the doings of the cabinet and the party, thereby prevents degeneration of a party government into dictatorship. Besides, there cannot be a proper functioning of any party government unless there is constant criticism of the doings of that party. And he believed that public opinion must be created about doings of the government and strong opposition must exist with a leader who is whole-time worker. are India's, unfortunately, India's saddest, I think, status today is complete absence of credible opposition. Congress is withered away. The regional parties are, they are, I would say, too parochial, too selfish for states' interests or for their, interest of the caste or creed that they come from. And they can never provide a kind of an alternative which is needed for a vibrant democracy. So India's real problem today is this. So look at this contradiction. You have a country which is today on the cusp of one of the greatest economic revolutions. We are today $1 trillion economy and aiming to be $5 trillion economy soon. Our technology experts are today world's best. Look at Bangalore, look at Gurgaon, look at Hyderabad. All these are centers of excellence in India. And on the other hand, we are singularly now falling in terms of manufacturing sector. The small and medium businesses are failing, and the exports, although we are now we are happy that we have 400 billion of exports achieved a few days ago, but they are far too short for us to really place us at any map on international scene. But the whole approach, unfortunately, of this country and the world, I must say, I am sorry to say that even the world looks at India with an extremely myopic view. You don't have to look at the GDP and the Bombay Stock Exchange to see what India's progress is, because that's a completely misguiding factors. These are not these are not the barometers of India's economic health. Imagine you have nothing less than about 700 million people who are living below poverty line. Now, can any country sustain this? And no efforts are being made. Look at the joblessness. We needed 15 to 20 million jobs when Prime Minister Modi took over in 2015 per year. And what have we got? 1 million or 2 per year. And we have lost large number of jobs in demonetization and 6 hours lockdown. We are not able to get them back. Now, there are therefore, nobody has, unfortunately in India today, unlike, powerful Western democracies, there are no, reliable statistics available on any aspect in India today. The chief statistician to Government of India and the deputy chief statistician both resigned some years ago under Mr. Modi's government, saying that the figures which are being given out are not correct figures. Now, we have therefore no idea, but conservative estimate is that today at least 100 to 150 million people are sitting without jobs, young men and women. And if you do not give them jobs, if they are not gainfully employed, naturally it will result in social evil. So, there is serious issue about crimes. There is serious issues about challenges to women, attacks on women, rapes, molestation. These are increasing very, and for every one case of rape, maybe 10 or 20 or 50 go unreported in this country because of social stigma, because of, lack of police protection, because of lack of, willingness to investigate, whatever may be the reason. So situation is becoming alarming. In poverty index, India has fallen short of even countries like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. In health, India is behind Bangladesh and Sri Lanka in international indexes. And of course, government would like to just simply, wish these indexes away, saying that they are not right. But nobody can dispute that these figures are developed by some of the world's best experts. They have nothing against India. They are objectively preparing them and they are presenting them. So on corruption level, as against that, we stand some 85 in the world. That's another challenge that India is facing today, corruption, which is now in the veins of virtually every Indian. It's in our blood and it's eating away our resources, which are so scarce are, and I mean, you will recall Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's statement many years ago when he was Prime Minister, when he said that for every rupee that Government of India spends, 25 paisa are eaten away. To my mind, it may be 75 paisa today, because it's not just money that goes away. The money that is used in developmental projects is so badly utilized that the development projects are not of high standards and quality. Take the roads. Why is it that when you lay the roads, those roads are required to be relaid every year after every monsoon? It's because there is corruption. Now, corruption is not just taking away money. Corruption really results in serious inefficiency. The quality of infrastructure projects suffer immensely, immensely. And as a result, the life also suffers. Because, today to live in cities, how cities are. Today, I mean, post-monsoon, even in a city like Mumbai, it is virtually impossible to travel comfortably. So, these things are, are challenges which nobody wants to understand. This is all part of, the larger rule of law that we are talking about. You don't have to look at, in the incidents which take place challenging individuals' liberties are extremely important. They should not be allowed to happen at all. But those are attacks against the individuals and, attacks on their fundamental rights. But the attacks on the nation in this fashion are extraordinarily challenging. And these attacks on the nation are, leaving behind scars which are so deep that we will never be able to recover from them. So this is something which, where now, corruption, for example, is a serious challenge to equality, very serious challenge to liberty. Now, nobody wants to understand that, these kind of challenges are really not good for the country. So I don't know how we are really going to, counter this. It's very, very difficult. But let me tell you something, that this is not something which is happening today, and we therefore feel that only India is, subjected to this. Demosthenes, one of the Greek philosophers, way back in 381 before Christ, had made this profound statement when he said, there is one safeguard known generally to the wise. There is one safeguard known generally to the wise, which is an advantage and security to all, but especially to democracies as against despots. What is that safeguard according to him? He says, distrust. He says, distrust the democracies. And if you distrust them, then you will constantly be looking after them. You will be constantly trying to challenge them, those in power. And it is only out of that distrust that you can persuade them, prevail upon them to do something better and better and better. This is a challenge which we are facing today in, this country. So, I mean, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, not just Ambedkar, but both Ambedkar and Sardar Patel, for example, who presided on the minority committee during the Constituent Assembly, both had forewarned. And this is where, it's important for minority community members to understand. Both had, and majority to understand more, both had said that the minority has placed their fate in the hands of the majority community. And the majority community has therefore to ensure that the minority community is made to come into the mainstream of the society as early as possible. In fact, Sardar Patel warned, saying that you, the majority community members, please put yourself in the shoes of the minority community and then see, would you like how they are being treated? Now, these are the profound words of these two leaders during the Constituent Assembly debate. And we are today unable to really, ensure the members of the minority community, the kind of respect and kind of status, a safeguard under the Constitution, which they deserve. This is something, a big challenge that we are facing. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the chairman of the Constituent Assembly, ended the debate on 25th of November 1949 with these words. He said, we have prepared a democratic constitution, but successful working of democratic institutions requires in those who have to work them willingness to respect the viewpoints of others, capacity for compromise and accommodation. Now, these things are singularly missing in our public life. Our politics, like in United States, has become completely polarized. So either you are with me or you are against me. Now, this is not good for a democracy. You are seeing the kind of debate that's taking place in the United States between the Democrats and the Republicans, especially the hardcore right-wing Republicans. We are having the same challenge today in India. So there is no tolerance in public life. And unless there is tolerance in public life, there can never be, a good governance. What you need is good governance. And a good governance can come only when the ruling party and those in opposition work together. They constantly brainstorm ideas, constantly respect each other, and then move forward. But that's not happening. Mrs. Gandhi, when she needed somebody to speak to the international community during 1971 Bangladesh war, she assigned that responsibility to late Mr. Vajpayee. And Mr. Vajpayee gave a brilliant speech at the United Nations in the Security Council. And he spoke as to why this war was, forced upon India, and why India was involved in this war, and why India was trying to help Bangladesh to liberate. Now, that's the kind of, relationship which the party in power and opposition leaders should have. Today, it's singularly missing. Largely also because the opposition doesn't have any credible leaders of Vajpayee's stature. So, politics today has become, I would say, professional politics for these people who are in public life. In the early 50s, 60s, and 70s, the politicians who came to govern India were those who had, participated in freedom struggle, who had sacrificed their lives, their wealth for the nation. They had come to serve the country. They were successful in their private lives, and they had left everything. Like Motilal Nehru or Jawaharlal Nehru, they left their, successful practices as lawyers. Sardar Patel left it. And thousands of other people left their practices in various fields or their businesses, and they joined, freedom struggle. Today's politicians are lifelong professional politicians, most of them at least. And as a result, they are just simply interested in perpetuating their position in politics because they have nowhere else to go. So, it's as a result of that, the quality of politics has seriously, I would say, undermined, has seriously fallen beyond repair. Beyond repair. Good people are not willing to come into public life because they fear. So, and there is a lot of criminalization, which you are seeing today. India's parliament has some of the largest, has members with, very large number of them with criminal antecedents. When recently Singapore Prime Minister spoke about it in his parliament and compared what India's democracy was under Nehru, this present government was very upset and criticized that statement. But his statement was profound. The Supreme Court is seriously, looking into it, where it has asked all high courts in the country and all courts to expedite these cases against these politicians, which are not really seeing the light of the day because they are politicians, they are powerful. Therefore, their cases are never, ultimately decided. So that is also undermining the kind of, people who are in power. India's biggest problem, to my mind, is that excellence has become victim. We have become a nation of mediocrity. Although Indians are outstanding in their intellectual capacity. You look at what Indians today, Fortune 500 companies, at least 50 to 75 companies are headed by Indians. Look at their contribution in United States or Europe. I mean, they are at the top of the fields. All of you have done so well. In India also, as I said, there are, there are some small pockets of excellence like Infosys or Tata's or Wipro or, Sun Pharma or others. But by and large, I mean, or institution of, education like IITs and IIMs. But although these IITs and IIMs, when you see the world list, they don't even figure in first 250 institutions. And now with increased politics or political interference in their functioning, they are also facing a serious challenge. So this is something which we really need to address all the time. Unless we address this, it's not going to be very easy for us to really bring this country up to face the challenge, to really, give everybody, kind of a life that democracy promises to give. Ultimately, what's the purpose of democracy? The purpose of democracy is not just to give freedom to speech, freedom of expression, or freedom to live anywhere, or freedom to do business, but also to give that individual, the citizen, the kind of a quality of life which he deserves. And therefore, rule of law becomes extraordinarily important. In every sense, if you don't have a job, if you don't have a home, if you don't have clothes to wear, if you don't have food to eat, and if you don't have security of the law, can you say that state has done really something well? And if overwhelming majority of Indians do not have this, then certainly we can say that India has not succeeded after 75 years of democracy. So constitutional democracy in India, I mean, is definitely under siege, according to me. It's under siege. It's seized by maybe tens of millions of Indians. They may be businessmen, they may be bureaucrats, they may be judges, they may be professional like us, they may be workers, leaders, they may be gangsters. These are the people who have seized this country, or I would say hijacked this country from a common man. And to get that country back into the hands of the common man for common good is the greatest challenge that India is facing. I'm not sure whether India can really, overcome this challenge. But really what is sad is that no efforts are being made to overcome this challenge. And that is really I would say, the sad part of India's democracy. That nothing is being done. There are no debates, there are no efforts. I mean, India's conscience is dead. Every capital of the world has had demonstration of thousands of people about what is happening in Ukraine in support of Ukrainians. Not one in India. That shows that India, it doesn't care for anything. Indians don't care for anything. Who is going to come to our help if, God forbid, China attacks us tomorrow? Now, this is where we really must realize that we must follow international. See, universal declarations are very important. Universal declarations of rights are sacrosanct. And those rights are as good as or as important as fundamental rights under the Constitution. So the nation must appreciate those rights. Nation must therefore consciously, try and see that these rights are respected world over. If you don't talk about the respect in other countries, who is going to talk about loss of those rights in your own country? And as a result, today what's happening in India is virtually being ignored by the West. Yes, some isolated comment here by United States, some Department of Human Rights or Justice Department or something, some comment is being made. Or when President Obama came, he made some comment in Delhi during discussions with young students. But that's all. If the world were to take a look at what is happening in India today, and the international community were to really question the government of India, that what is happening today on the ground level is not good for India, then I think things might change. things might change. But that's not what's happening. Every world leader is willing to shake hands and embrace Mr. Modi only because India is the second largest market in the world. And India is the second largest buyer of arms in the world after Saudi Arabia. So, the world is a very selfish, today place, and they don't care what is happening in any country. So it's something which, and I mean, we have seen what United States did in Iraq or Libya or Syria, and the world kept quiet about it. Today, when it's happening in Ukraine by Russia, the Western world is certainly woken up and is condemning it. But, I think whoever has the sword wields the sword. That's the principle in international relationship. But for India, for the 1.3 billion people, it is important that the world really takes care of India. World looks at us with, a very, I would say, caring eyes. Nobody says that world should criticize government of India. No. But the constant encouragement, constant guiding, constant reminder will help, in ensuring that the constitution remains as intact as it was originally envisaged. If you look at the Constituent Assembly debates and understand each article of the constitution, you will realize that we are today millions of miles away from those, thoughts of the constitutional framers. And mind you, these men and women who deliberated constitution for almost 2 years were the most outstanding Indians that India could ever have had. We are forgetting their sacrifices. We are forgetting their contribution. And we are forgetting this most beautiful document that they gave us, the Constitution of India, which is founded after borrowing, from some of the world's best constitution. The spirits of Japanese Constitution, the Canadian Constitution, the US Constitution, the English Constitution, although they are unwritten, all these, were borrowed. German Constitution. We borrowed from all of them. And then, we have the amalgam of this Constitution, the Constitution of India. So I would only say one thing, that we are far from what Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore had said in Gitanjali, in those famous words, where the mind is without fear and head is held high, where the knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. And I will not continue with that. Into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. Now, to my mind, our country has still not awakened into that freedom. That's the real challenge. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dave Saab. It was a wonderful talk and so revealing and somewhat depressing. Obviously, what we are facing and what we are seeing, the state of democracy in India. Unfortunately, suddenly, Ms. Kavita Srivastava gave me a message that she is really sick with high fever. This was not expected. That's why she didn't join it. So this is the first time ever that I'm facing this. So I am inviting, out of blue, my very dear senior friend, who is quite a well-known scholar on almost all subjects, Dr. Mozam Siddiqui, to give an unprepared few minutes concluding remark on what he has observed and what he is seeing. By the way, Dr. Mozam Siddiqui was a director of the South Asian and many other cultural sections at Voice of America for a long time. And he hails from Hyderabad, India. आप अपने को अनम्यूट कर लें. आप अपने को unmute yourself. You cannot. No.
No, you are not unmuted, Siddiqui Saab.
Siddiqui Saab, unmute कर लें अपने को. क्यों कह रही है ऐसा करने के बाद?
Does Faisal have to do something?
Faisal, can you?
No, I made him co-host, so he should be able to unmute.
Now you can unmute your co-host. What's the problem? You are always saying something at the sessions. We cannot hear you.
No, he's not unmuted.
He's not
sure.
unmute.
Sometimes
Yeah.
Yeah, that's problem.
Why you cannot unmute yourself? That is a surprise. I cannot just figure it out. Why he cannot unmute himself?
Let us go ahead with the Q&A then.
Faisal, you cannot do from your side, right?
Right. If not.
That is.
उनको मैसेज करिए ना, फोन करिए.
नहीं वो सुन रहे हैं वो
नहीं नहीं, गुजरने को से फोन से हो. Give me the phone.
Unmute करो.
Unknown caller.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Ji, ji, sure.
I'm
Please.
sorry about that technical glitch.
All right. So can you just give
Yeah.
few minutes,
Uh,
including remarks?
First of all, Mr. Dushyant Dave, His Excellency, I should call you His Excellency Dushyant Dave, because he gave a very, it's hard for me to describe what a fascinating and at the same time, what a tragic kind of state of affairs in India. And India, which used to be, as Allama Iqbal had said, Sare Jahan se acha Hindustan hamara, and it has the potential to be Sare Jahan se acha Hindustan hamara. But what is happening right now, and as Mr. Dave had pointed out, we have been through these glitches in the past as well, but this time it has been so serious that it seems the very foundations of our democracy are shaken. And if the BJP remains in power, I should call it, actually, it is not the BJP. BJP is only the political wing. It is the RSS and the Hindutva mentality, which is eating India like, like what you call a Deemak. And as he has challenged all Indians who love their country and who care for their country to rise up to this occasion. But the unfortunate situation is that the majority of the Indians who are in a position to make a difference and who can make a change, they have, as if they have been opiated by some kind of, drug, and they are unable to rise up, and they are sleeping the Khabe Khargosh, and the responsibility especially is on our shoulders, those Indians who are living abroad in other countries. And I can tell you that in our community, within the Indian diaspora, thanks to Mr. Dr. Raziuddin and other colleagues, we have started an initiative to form groups within ourselves and try to do things from here which are going to make no matter how a small effort, but they in the long run are going to make a big difference if communities in Indian communities, Indian diaspora in the United States and in Europe and other countries begin to organize on these lines. I can see that not in the distant future, we would be able to make a change. And this is the time to organize and to start making this effort to try to do something and try to serve our motherland, where we were born. And I know that America is our adopted homeland, but our adopted country. But our love for Bharat Mata, our love for our country where we were born, is challenging us to rise to the occasion. And I think we should, whenever we need some guidance, we would be looking to people like Mr. Dave and other distinguished colleagues that are participating in this program from India. And we should continue our effort. I'm sorry that, I'm making these remarks off the cuff. And I feel that I'm not doing full justice to the challenge that I have been called upon to perform right now. And I think I don't have much more to add.
That's okay, Mazum Saab. You did more than what was needed to say. And obviously, I had to take somebody's help, and I felt that it is you. So it's no discrimination against anybody else. So now we move to question and answer session. But before that, we just have an announcement for the coming Saturday. As always, we show. Faisal, can you please go to the announcement and then no.
Wait.
That was the previous. Okay, so coming week, we switch gears from long series of democracy and secularism to a little on education and history. So Professor Nazir Ahmed, who is a very distinguished fellow here in United States, a very senior Indian resident here, he is going to talk on history, science, and faith in Islamic education, perhaps putting that in tune with coming month of Ramadan. So thank you. And now the session will be moderated today by our co-host Mirza Faisal Beg, instead of Dr. Rafat Hussain, who is attending a wedding in Texas right now. So Faisal, over to you. Please take care.
Okay, thank you, Azibhai. One quick request to everyone, please keep your questions pointed and sharp and short. And the same request goes to you, Bishan Saab. You may have limited time, so restrict your answers would be very helpful. I'm going to call in the order that I see people raising hands. So Mr. Rudranshu Singh first, and then I will call Fazal Bhai and then Sayyid Amir Bhai. Rudranshu Singh.
Thank you, Dave sir. I have been listening to you quite regularly, and your lectures are always enlightening, and I love the elegance of your style of speaking, sir. My question is, sir, that has our judiciary developed an inclination for a Hindu Rashtra? Because Article 370, petitions on Article 370 haven't been entertained. And most recently, the hijab issue, the Supreme Court says that don't sensationalize it. There is no need for an urgent hearing. So the urgency which is lacking to hear important issues and communally charged up issues or political issues. And for the first time, I'm sorry to say that our judiciary has used adjournments as a tool to make those petitions infructuous. So has our judiciary developed an inclination and appetite for a Hindu Rashtra, sir?
Well, I won't say that they have developed inclination towards Hindu Rashtra, but they certainly have developed cold feet because of strong executive. Prime Minister Modi's government is a very strong government, like Mrs. Gandhi's government in 1975. In fact, even before emergency came, when Mrs. Gandhi became Prime Minister, it was Justice Bhagwati who had written a letter, as you know, one of the most well-known judges of this country, saying that sun is now rising from the east. So, I mean, judges are, human beings, and they are not infallible. And judges always see the wind blowing in a certain direction. and they, follow that wind. But I must say that largely the damage to judiciary has been done by the last 4 Chief Justices, Chief Justice Deepak Mishra, Chief Justice Kher, Chief Justice Gogoi, and Chief Justice Bobde. Worst of them was, of course, Chief Justice Gogoi. As you all know, that he got embroiled in a sexual harassment case, and perhaps the government helped him to, extricate himself from very serious charges. And as a result of quid pro quo, he decided to, give government certain judgments, and one of them was Ayodhya judgment. So, and the second was Rafael. And many more. So I think the fall started because of individuals. Sadly, many good judges also joined with him, which resulted in a judgment. These 4 judges, particularly, Gogoi and Bobde, and now Justice Ramna, certainly have not been willing to hear challenges against scrapping of Article 370 or challenge to CAA, which is definitely disturbing. And I have said on more than one occasion that the judges are willing to take up, useless corporate sector fights out of turn, like a fight between Tatas and Cyrus Mistry. And Justice Bobde spent many days to decide that case in favor of the Tatas, for whom his good friend Harish Salve was appearing. But otherwise, judges are reluctant to hear these extraordinarily important cases involving serious matters of great public importance. So it is. I think it's nothing to do with Hindutva. It has to do with weakening of the judiciary.
Thank you, Mr. Dushan. Fazal Bhai.
Thank you for an excellent talk, Mr. Dave. As you were speaking, I was trying to come up with questions. And before I can come up with the questions in my mind, you were answering those. That's an excellent talk and knowledge. However, and part of my question has been already asked by Rudranshu actually, but nonetheless, you mentioned the caste and creed, across the caste and creed line. I think there is, if I missed it, there is another line is religion. And I think in the recent election in UP and other states, I think different castes cross the line to vote for BJP simply because of the religion, and that is Islam actually. So I think they can cross the line in order to punish those who believe in Islam. So do you think that eventually a Hindu Ras is the answer for India, so that minority will not be used as a pawn in order to get the majority? Or because for majority, it seems as if secularism doesn't mean anything, and they might not understand even the definition of secularism, majority of the people. But seems like that in order to put in line one community, they can cross line and vote for or follow Hindutva. So do you think the Hindu Ras is the answer?
No, I don't think there is any. I mean, yes, the party in power and the organizations which back them may talk about Hinduism and Hindutva, but I think overall India really, is not ready for it as of now. What really India needs is a strong opposition. Problem is that, there is Mr. Modi has a towering personality. One may agree or disagree with him. I disagree with most of his policy and his actions, but that doesn't, detract from the fact that he is undoubtedly the most towering person on political spectrum, and there is nobody anywhere near him, especially within the opposition. Now, if that is so, the opposition doesn't know how to counter, his narrative. And unless the opposition learns how to counter that narrative, things are not going to be, and opposition is completely, disjointed. Now, for example, Mayawati's party got almost 13% vote share. Congress got 2%. Now, between the two parties, they got 3 seats only. But if they had joined with Samajwadi Party in UP, with 13% vote share, at least part of its, even 7% had come to Samajwadi Party, the results would have been diametrically opposite. So largely, I would put the blame today, when history is written 100 years from now, it will write that the forces of fascism really came into India thanks to the opposition parties, particularly the Congress Party.
Thank you. Saeed bhai? Sayyid Amir bhai?
Okay. Thank you, Professor Dev. Very inspiring talk. Part of what you were just touched, I was going to ask the question is that in India, we have for centuries, starting from Ashok the Great, Akbar the Great, the last Mughal king, have been used to autocratic or very powerful monarchs. Some of them benign, others not so benign. But the India has, and so other countries also, dominated by these powerful kings, leaders. When I was growing up in India in my student days, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was the prime minister, and he was so powerful and his personality was so dominant. People used to ask, what after Nehru? He was the leader of the Congress, but it was the Nehru who drove the whole direction of the country. And after that, Indira Gandhi briefly also, the same situation, and now Modi, as you just mentioned yourself. The question is that although Indian democracy has survived and flourished, Indian electorate is used to the voting every 3, 4, 5 years, but still it is driven, unlike the Western democracies, Britain, Germany, America, is more kind of a cult of personality. I wonder what you think if Modi was to step down as the leader of the party, would BJP or Rashtriya Son Singh, without him, will fare as well? I wonder so.
No, I won't say this problem is only, I mean, in United States, elected somebody like Mr. Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, he's not going to be re-elected, I don't think.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether he'll be re-elected or not, but he had a substantial support in the country. Now, the answer to what you are saying, actually, Dr. Ambedkar gave on 25th November 1949, and I would really request all of you to, dig out that statement in Constituent Assembly and read it at leisure. He said, and he was quoting Edmund Burke, the great political philosopher, and he said that one of the greatest challenges that India has is, bhakti in public life, in politics. And this is in 1947. He said, bhakti is good for salvation of the soul, but bhakti in politics is sure path to dictatorship. Now, India's political democracy has not matured sufficiently. Our voter has not matured sufficiently. As a result of that, towering personalities like Mr. Modi or Mrs. Gandhi, for that matter, can really have tremendous impact on the minds of the people. So it's something which is very difficult to really understand, because India still is very feudal in many ways. One, because of this, the composition of the population, the caste and the religious considerations. Also, the kind of literacy or illiteracy that we have. And of course, the gap between the rich and the poor is so powerful that these people who really bring about, during election campaign, you see the kind of, power which works on the common man so strongly, that here is somebody who's so powerful a leader that he can fly in jets and helicopters and have thousands of policemen guarding him, go around in, big limousines. And he feels that this is the kind of a man I want to elect. So there are complex issues. What really is, underlines the India's, kind of political approach in election is lack of or absence of political maturity on the part of our, voters. And that can only come with development and more education. And of course, the role played by media. Media is completely now hijacked by the government in power. And therefore, the media constantly is brainwashing the minds of the voters with, totally, wrong and sad narratives. And that the people, ordinary men and women, are not able to decipher. They cannot see through that. So there is a combination of problems which is affecting. And of course, as Ambedkar said, bhakti is the worst of them.
Thank you, Daveji. Before I call Monojit ji, anybody else who wants to ask a question, you can either raise your hand or put your question in the chat and I'll call you. Monojit ji, go ahead. You're on mute.
Thank you. That was a very interesting talk and one which was very inspiring in the sense that it reminded me very much of being a young person growing up in an idealistic India, which we have now lost. Two things which came up from your talk, which maybe, I got the impression that you may have argued that reservations were possibly being misused. And at the same time, there are 700 million people below the poverty line, as you pointed out. And of course, the poverty line itself is the most pathetic number. It's $2 US per person per day or something like that. So in Indian money, this is like 200 rupees or something. It's just hopeless definition made up by the World Bank. But is it your opinion that the poverty issue could be better handled through more aggressive use of reservations or lesser use of reservations? That's the question.
Speaking for myself, I'm in favor of reservation, undoubtedly. The reservation that I talked about in my talk was reservation in super specialty in medicine.
Okay.
So at the super specialty level, reservation should not be there, to my mind, at all. Because we are not talking about undergrad program. We are not talking about postgraduate program. We are talking about PhD programs, super specialties. Now at super specialties, if you are going to have, in field of medicine, neurosurgery or medicine or whatever it is, reservation, then it's not going to work. Otherwise, I feel that reservation must be there. Because, for several thousand years, we have treated a section of society as poorly as as one can never imagine. And even today, their conditions haven't improved. Their conditions haven't improved. Have you ever seen, you must be visiting India, have you ever seen anybody from high caste Hindus who is sweeping the streets of your village or town or city? No, it's those people who are for generations doing that. Now, why is it that we have, fastened upon them the responsibility that they only should be cleaning up our toilets and our streets, and that we should not be able to do it? So, this is just an example. We are treating the Dalits extremely poorly. In every village today you go, the Dalits have separate hutments away from the hutments of the high caste, Hindus. And, they have their own well, they have their own temple. And it's that divide has still not been bridged. So definitely you need, but having said that, it's not just the Dalits, it's the poor. It's those who don't have the opportunity to really come up in life, which is the most troubling aspect of today's India. They have to be given, how do you empower people? You can empower common man by not just by educating him. We have millions of graduates with degrees who are sitting around unemployed. So we have to generally create an atmosphere where we can put thrust on both agriculture and industry and tourism, or every available opportunity of job creation, where we can create more and more and more jobs so that people can be gainfully employed. Simultaneously, we should also work seriously on controlling population, which we are not doing. If the way the population, we were 30 crores when we became independent in 1947. We are 130 crores today in 75 years. Now imagine, where do we have the resources to cater to such large population? But nobody, including the powerful Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, does ever speak about overpopulation and the challenges faced by overpopulation. So these are very serious issues to really, you definitely need to look at it very differently. I think those Indian diaspora who are so hugely successful in the Western world, they should all come back to India. At least some of them should really guide. And I think Prime Minister Modi should invite some of them to guide them as to what are the policies which we should have, where we can progress economically, socially, culturally. And unless we do that, because every day lost is lost by us. And we pride ourselves today with the largest population of young, working force in the world, which we indeed have. But what good is that, force if that force remains unemployed? So, I mean, soon these people in another 30 years will become octogenarians like the Chinese. And they will become, in a sense, burden on the society because they are not working. They have not contributed anything. So these are multiple challenges which I don't think anybody is interested in addressing. And I don't think anybody really understands them as they should really. They are all interested in themselves. They are all interested in today. Nobody is interested in future of India.
Thank you. Mr. Sayed Hussain?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dave. You have done an excellent presentation. A person like you with the stature you have could make those statements because I could see that you are sincerely devoted for the country, not any other political reasons. And that's what we have to have more people like you. My simple question is that one of the facts you're telling that we will have to have a strong opposition to take care of this problem we are facing right now. My question is, could you suggest which ways we should go to develop such a strong opposition?
The only way is for opposition parties to unite. There is no other way. I mean, no party, single party, or no group of parties also can really confront the challenge that might be faced on account of extreme philosophy. So what we really need is to, and also it's not just the philosophy which you have to counter. It's also the negligence or the inefficiency of the government which we must counter. The government must follow the right priorities. For that, they must draw the right priorities. And for that, the opposition must tell them what the priorities should be. So opposition needs to, get its act together, have one cohesive group, although they may be different within that group. But this cohesive group must, think about the nation, about the national challenges, the national problems, the national priorities, and the national solutions. Or then only, this can be presented to the party in power and they can be addressed together. So I think they also must win the trust of the party in power. There's no point fighting the government all the time and criticizing Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi is here to stay. He's after all our prime minister. So there's no point damning him all the time. I mean, you may damn him from 2002, which I do. But why not damn Congress party with equal force for 1984? Or for thousands of illegal arrests of Muslims that Congress party made in many states, including Gujarat, that I know of. So, I mean, all politicians are same. But what I am suggesting is that they must work together, and we must therefore strive to ensure that they work together towards, a common agenda, a common, aim for the country.
Thank you. I have a question in chat from somebody.
I wish the opposition parties do understand what you are trying to say, because one time poet said it very correctly. समझोगे तो मिट जाओगे हिंदुस्तान वालों तुम्हारी दास्तान भी ना होगी दास्तानों में. I think that's a very powerful statement the poet made, and if the opposition don't understand.
Real challenge is not that. Real challenge is what I think Sahir Ludhianvi said. जिन्हें नाज है हिंद पर वो कहाँ है. That's
बिल्कुल सही, बिल्कुल सही.
Thank you. So let me read the next question from.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Yeah, okay, we'll move on. There's a question in the chat which says that if Hindu Rashtra becomes the future, hypothetically speaking, what will be the attributes of the new constitution in terms of protection to the different caste and religious communities?
I don't think Hindu Rashtra will ever come, but if it ever comes, I don't think they are interested in eliminating the minorities. So, it's just to gain power that they use this kind of, narrative. But ultimately, even the politicians within the ruling, party do not wish to wish away minority communities. It can't happen. We have 150 to 200 million Muslims. We have about 50 to 75 million Sikhs. We just can't, do away with that. And we have, I think, about 25 to 30 million Christians in our country. So we just can't wish them away. And I don't think any political party can do that. I mean, that nobody, I don't see any political party, including the BJP or the RSS, ever wishing a genocide in this country as it happened in Myanmar. So I am not really worried about it. It's about power. Everybody wants to perpetuate power. How do you therefore get power? You try and persuade the Hindus, voters more and more as that we will do this, we will do that. And they fall prey to that and they vote for you. But beyond that, I don't think there are any dangers at all. No dangers at all. I don't think anybody, including Prime Minister Modi or anybody else, would wish anything, any personal harm to come to any community.
Thank you. I do not have any more questions from the audience. Last call, anyone wants to raise any last question before I hand over to Razibhai?
I think it's been a long time, so I also have to now go.
All right, hand over to Razibhai for the to conclude.
Hello, this is Mr. Batra. Can I make just a comment?
Yes, Ashok sir. Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Dave, I was really impressed by your talk. I'm a fellow attorney who practices locally here. I just underwent a open heart surgery, but when I came to know you are making a presentation, so I made a time to listen to your talk. I really feel privileged to listen to your talk. Currently, I am at a lab, and
I wish you speedy recovery, Ashokji.
thank you very much. I have followed some of your presentations in the court, and I have been following it for quite some time.
Batraji zyada baat mat kijiye, aaram kijiye. Thank you
Okay.
for attending. I'll give you a call. Okay, thank you. So, Daveji, it is, yes, it has been 90 minutes. So perhaps you must be feeling tired. I have this is the last question. You talked about all caste and all kind of creeds, but I do not know, you focus a little bit, but the present government or the political forces have focused on the minorities so much. You didn't talk much about really how Muslims are facing this challenge in India and what should be the roadmap for them if there is any kind of positive or constructive prescription, effective prescription. How should they not fall into any trap, and what should they do to make alliances? And whether really, in your opinion, you said a couple of times that no, Modi doesn't want to do this, or Hindutva are not really that dangerous. But every now, often, here and there, we see that this community has been cornered so much on almost at all level. So is this not a real, like, they exist, but it has become such an unequal playing field for them? What to do?
Well, there is no doubt that there is a challenge to the Muslim community in India today, and their level playing field has been seriously impaired. I must acknowledge that. The executive and the judiciary both are lukewarm towards their existence and their rights, undoubtedly so. But the answer has to come from within the community itself. I think if the community, makes serious efforts to integrate itself into, the society at large, perhaps, the majority will have no reason to really look at them as members of minority community. They look at them because of various distinguishing facts about the minority community, which doesn't have to really be there today. What happened way back when Prophet Muhammad gave his sermons was a different time, and what is happening in today's democracy and today's life day-to-day life is very different. So I think the community must realize what it wants to do and what it wants to, how it wants to really integrate into the mainstream of the society and not, maintain their political identity. They must maintain their cultural identity and their religious identity. That's without any doubt.
So
But,
how the integration you define?
I think it can only come if they have good leaders, and the Muslims community must produce their own good leaders, not depend on the opposition parties. They must have their own responsible leaders who can guide them into taking right steps and being part and parcel of the mainstream of the society.
So
There is no reason for them to distrust anybody, including BJP. I mean, I disagree with BJP's philosophy, but I think beyond a point, there is no point flogging about it or talking about it all the time. So what they really should do is to speak about, the job opportunities for them, the education for them, the, status of women amongst them, etc., etc. So I think these issues, once debated publicly by, responsible leaders, doctors maybe from the community or lawyers from the community, then I think, or other, philosophers, or I think they need some different approach than what has been their approach so far.
So, okay, just an explanation for that. The integration, what aspect of the integration that you feel is really should be targeted? Because after all, they are distinct. They are culturally distinct, but they are also
I think it is integration of the hearts which is required, nothing else.
So that is very difficult to do.
No, it's not difficult. It's not difficult.
I mean,
So,
what you think that their heart is not.
They don't need to be apprehensive all the time. They don't need to be critical all the time. They have to really work, in some way to understand and perhaps, articulate, within, you see, one-to-one, the two communities don't have serious differences. They must understand that politicians naturally for their narrow ends will try and do something.
So
I think
from the other end, how do you really see what really Muslims as a other Indian?
I think we will debate this on some other occasion.
Okay, all right.
Today. So thank you very, very much. Thanks to all of you for saying kind words about me. I appreciate a lot. And I wish you all good luck. And please do work for betterment of this country. We need you.
Thank you very much. We will try our best and we keep on trying. And thanks a lot. And it has been really a long time. So you may please, you can go now, and maybe others can chat around if they want to.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good day. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.